It's kind of strange when we pause to think about it, how this day that commemorates the day of Jesus' crucifixion is called Good Friday. It's strange how the retelling of a story of the gruesome death of a peasant from a small town in Israel is associated with the word good. Today, we hear the story of a young man who found himself on the wrong side of the Roman government, who threatened the established order so much that he was put to death by one of Rome's favorite forms of execution, specifically designed to be so brutal and humiliating that it would deter anybody from posing a threat to the way things were done. This day has had different names throughout Christian tradition. It's been called Black Friday. It's in the German translation, it's called Sorrowful Friday. In the Orthodox tradition, it's called Great and Holy Friday. And I think those terms tend to resonate with me a bit more. Today is a sorrowful day, a day marked by solemnity, but today is also a holy day. This afternoon, we hear the Passion account, which Carl chanted so beautifully, from the Gospel of John. And in John's telling of the Passion, Jesus is in control the entire time. He doesn't beg or stumble or cry out while he's hanging from the cross. He doesn't need help carrying his cross to the execution site like he does in the other gospel accounts of the Passion, where we hear how Simon of Cyrene has to help him along the way. In John's account of the gospel, Jesus is in control. He even directs and even orchestrates his arrests when he goes out to go and meet the people who apprehend him. When he says, "I am thirsty," as he's hanging from the cross, we hear it is said in order to fulfill Scripture. Now, the author of the Gospel of John loves to use and tie in signs throughout his reading. And he does so throughout his Passion narrative. There's signs tied in throughout that reading. And he does this in order to remind his audience that all of this is tied to a much bigger story, a cosmic story, if you will. In John's account of the crucifixion, Jesus is in charge all the way. He knows what is about to take place, all that's about to take place, and he's not a victim. If we remember to the very beginning of John's gospel, we might remember those familiar words. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Remember those words? Jesus, the Word made flesh, was around from the very beginning. He was there when the world came into being. According to John's gospel, Jesus was not some second thought that God had when things didn't go as planned. Jesus was not plan B. Jesus was part of God's plan all along. It reminds me of that saying. I think it's from Richard Rohr. He says, Jesus didn't come into the world to change God's mind about us. Jesus came into the world to change our minds about God. And it's Jesus' vulnerable love on the cross that brings us into that way of life that Jesus invites us into. It's that vulnerable love on the cross that reveals God's love. And for those who are looking for a powerful and a mighty God, as they looked upon the scene of Jesus hanging on the cross, they may have been a bit confused and even disappointed. But for those who had been in relationship with Jesus, who had traveled with him over the years, who had listened to his teachings, who had had their feet washed by him just the night before, those who gathered at the foot of the cross, his mother, Mary, the wife of Clopas, Mary Magdalene, the beloved disciple, they looked upon a scene in which God had died for them, had died in love for them. Barbara Brown Taylor, a famous preacher in the Episcopal tradition, says this. She writes, "He had put his own body between them and those who meant to do them harm. He had demolished the rock around their hearts. He had shown them a dangerous new way to live." He had shown them a dangerous new way to live. On that day when Jesus was crucified, two worlds collided. The world of the Roman Empire, Tiberius Caesar, represented by Pontius Pilate, and on the other hand, the one whose kingdom is not of this world, Jesus. Jesus on the cross reveals God's holy vision of creating a new community based in self-giving and unrestricted love. God's holy vision, a new community that is counter to the ways of domination and power and selfishness that we humans tend to gravitate towards. And Jesus was so committed to revealing God's holy vision that he embodied this unrestricted, self-giving love, even to the point of death on the cross. Even when humanity does its worst, Jesus, unfazed and triumphant, invites us into a new way of life, a particular way of life, a way of life marked by taking a stand against systems that use exploitation and violence, a way of life that is marked by taking a stand against systems that benefit some but do harm to others. Jesus fully lived into this divine, holy vision that God had for him, and he invites us to do the same. He invites us to find the courage and the strength to embody this unrestricted, self-giving love in our lives so that we may live into God's holy vision in the face of systems that use exploitation and cause harm. I have to be honest and say I still have trouble calling this day good, especially when it involves the death of a young man. But the words of the scholar David Luce have helped me a little bit. And David Luce writes this. He says, "This is why we call this day, on which we remember the cruel death of an innocent Good Friday. For on it we remember that vulnerability is more powerful than violence, forgiveness more powerful than justice, love more powerful than hate, and life more powerful than death. As we witness Jesus' peculiar, unexpected, but oh so ultimate victory in and through the cross." Today is a day when we are invited into God's holy vision and way of life made known through Jesus. Today is a holy day. Amen.